Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is really incredible to see such a full room. On behalf of the Unhoused initiative at Santa Clara and the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics, I am so glad to welcome you all to this conversation with recently re-elected San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan, focused on homelessness in his city. My name is Marlene Bennett. I am the project director of the Unhoused initiative. If you are unfamiliar with us, we are a faculty collaborative focused on engaging the campus and building community connections so that the university can have an active and intentional role in the local response to homelessness. You can find out more about us at our website, scu-unhousedinitiative.org. And the UI is so grateful to the Markkula Center for co-sponsoring today's event with us. As I mentioned, there are index cards and pens available for you to write down your questions for Mayor Mahan, and Q&A will take place after his remarks. As is our custom with the UI, after the event there will be homemade cookies out in the hallway. Please enjoy them as you leave. There's also a sign-up sheet should you want to receive our quarterly newsletter. I promise not to spam you. And without further delay, I would like to introduce Dean Daniel Press of the College of Arts and Sciences. Dean Press joined us in 2020 after a long career at UCSC. He is an environmental policy expert and a generous supporter of the Unhoused initiative. So welcome, Dean Press.
Thanks, Marlene, for that. This is quite a turnout for a kind of gray, overcast Thursday. So you have star power, apparently, right at the beginning of spring quarter. So I'm very pleased to introduce the mayor. And before I do that, I want to give thanks to Marlene, to David DeCoste, to Sonia McKenzie, and everybody who has supported the Unhoused initiative. It's a wonderful initiative that has been co-sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences, notably, especially folks in public health, and also the law school. It's substantively, morally, politically a great initiative. It's also wonderful when two of the schools on campus can collaborate in a really productive way. So I appreciate that. I know also that Mayor Matt has focused his policies around Unhoused to be quite comprehensive. He has drawn attention to the need for both temporary shelter as well as permanent shelter. This is something that the Unhoused initiative has also focused attention on. So from a policy perspective or policy analytic perspective, it's more comprehensive, and I think there's great alignment there. So that's another reason why we're excited to hear from you. Okay, so let me just introduce the mayor. Mayor Matt Mahan is serving his second term, right? Because didn't you just get reelected?
Starting January 1st.
Starting January.
So my first term's 2 years, which ends at the end of this year.
Okay, but you just got reelected.
Yes. So very awkward. We realigned the mayor's race around the presidential cycle. So I had this awkward 2-year term, then I'll have a 4-year term, and then if the voters decide, I could do another 4 years.
So you're around for a little. So you're in your 1.5 term.
I'm 1.5 in. Yeah.
Okay. He was raised in Watsonville, California, and attended Bergin College Prep in San Jose, not too far, right? One of our feeder schools.
That's right.
He then attended Harvard University instead of coming here, and graduated in 2005. After graduation, Mayor Mahan spent a year building irrigation systems in Bolivia, and then joined Teach for America, where he worked at Alum Rock Middle School. In 2008, Mayor Mahan joined a tech startup and helped develop Causes, an early Facebook application that raised money for nonprofit organizations. He became CEO and president of Causes in 2013. In 2014, Mayor Mahan co-founded Brigade Media because he likes to found things a lot, a tech company focused on civic engagement. In January 2021, Mayor Mahan was sworn in as the council member for San Jose District 10, and in September 2021, he entered the race for mayor and was elected in November 2022. And as I said, he was just reelected to his 1.5 and then 2
First full term.
Right, exactly. So without any further ado,
thank you, Dean.
Mayor Mahan.
I appreciate it. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Dean Press, Marlene, and Professor DeCoste. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you all. And let me say a couple sort of prefatory things, and then we'll jump into some content. And then the heart of this will really be the back and forth and your I'm sure, very good and tough questions. I'm getting used to being asked a lot of tough questions as an elected official. But first, I want to thank you for having the Unhoused initiative here and putting a spotlight on what I consider to be one of our biggest, perhaps locally our largest, ethical, fiscal, environmental challenge that we face. And first and foremost, really a moral failing, the fact that we have thousands of people living outside in tents and vehicles in unsafe conditions. And having gone to Bellarmine just down the road, as you heard, another great Jesuit institution, we talked a lot about social justice and what is our responsibility to our fellow human beings. And so I appreciate that you're putting an emphasis here. I will also say up front that you have professors and researchers and people in the room here who can give you much deeper analysis and history on many of these issues. What I think I can offer you is a moment in time, a snapshot of what it's like as a policymaker to grapple with a really challenging issue and to think about trade-offs, and with very limited resources and a lot of bad options, frankly, to figure out how to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people with some very significant constraints. So if I leave you with anything today, I hope, especially for those of you who are interested in careers in government and politics and public policy and research and all the rest, to give you a little bit of just a dose of the reality that we face every day in local government, trying to grapple with such a frankly kind of overwhelming and complicated issue. So look forward to the questions. I think I'll jump into a little bit of content and then we'll just open it up if that works for everybody. So, first of all, how did we get here? This is why I said I'm not going to give you the full history lesson, but I think there's one statistic that to me says more than any other about how we ended up in this crisis. And this is a collection of many different failures and years of policy failures. But the one that I'll just highlight for you more than any other is that over the last couple of decades, our region has added 6 jobs for every one home we have built. And so there are many factors. We can talk about untreated mental health and addiction and all sorts of challenges, but the lack of housing, particularly affordable housing to people making very low incomes or who are otherwise vulnerable for whatever reason, is the single biggest driver of this crisis. And the reality is there are many other places in our country where you have addiction rates at the same level as you have in San Jose, you have mental illness at the same level, you have underperforming schools at the same level, you have many other sort of social failings that contribute to this crisis, but you don't have thousands of people living out on the streets because there's much more abundant and affordable housing. So that, I think, is very fundamental to this issue. Current approaches, and I put the dollars up I'll get into this a bit, not to pit them against one another, but again, the reality of limited resources. Our primary approach locally is building permanent, affordable, and supportive housing. We have chosen to tax ourselves locally twice at the local level in the last decade, specifically to fund more affordable housing. We passed Measure A, which was a nearly $1 billion countywide bond that has now been mostly allocated. We also passed a real estate transfer tax, Measure E, at the city level. The vast majority of those funds, roughly 100% of Measure A and over 80% of Measure E dollars, have gone to building permanent, affordable units. We've now built and opened over 1,000 of those units, have quite a few thousand more, about 4,000 more in the pipeline. We just last year at the city level, using our transfer tax dollars, released another $50 million NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, to build another 388 units, we estimate, roughly. We've since, passing Measure E, deployed $250 million locally over the last 5 years to build affordable housing. The challenge, though, is really two things in terms of the scalability here. It's very slow and very expensive. I think for those of you interested in public policy, figuring out how to do it faster and more cost effectively is one of the most important things we can do. Because the fact today is that a new unit of permanent affordable housing in the city of San Jose requires about $1 million worth of public subsidy. Now that's layering on local, that's layering on state, that's also tax credits, but it's about $1 million a door in public subsidy, and the time to build is typically well over 5 years. Some of these projects take 5, 6, 7 years to build. And that, I won't go into a lot of detail unless you want to get into the Q&A, and there are other people in the room who may have greater expertise there. But again, from where I sit as an elected official who's been told by the community, this is our number one issue, and I see people literally dying on the streets, this is challenging because it's slow and it's expensive and it's not scaling. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, we need it, but we need other solutions. So in addition to building permanent affordable, in the last few years, we have leaned, and really the pandemic was part of the forcing function here. We've leaned very heavily into building what we call interim housing. That can take many forms, and that can be converting motels and hotels. One thing I just was at a site today with Congressman Panetta, who just secured $1 million to help us expand Rue Ferrari, which is one of our quick build modular housing sites. These are small communities with prefabricated modular units where people get their own small room with a door that closes, in many cases a private bathroom. And the emphasis here is on getting people stabilized with privacy and dignity quickly, and then connected to case management and supportive services and helping them to start to turn their lives around. But even there, it's not free. It's not particularly cheap. Even there, it costs about $100,000 a door. We can build these on a shorter time frame, call it 12 to 18 months, so it's not overnight. And cost of operations in both cases, whether you're getting a Section 8 voucher to subsidize the rent in the affordable unit at about $20,000 to $25,000 a year, or you're spending $25,000 to $30,000 a year for services at an interim site, there's no free lunch, as economists like to say. The operating costs across the board, whether it's the availability of Section 8 vouchers or it's our general fund dollars for this other option, are both real barriers financially. So in terms of, we're going through this budget process right now, we're thinking about, okay, what is our forward-looking strategy? We've added a lot of affordable housing, we've added a lot of interim housing, we still have 4,500 people out on the streets. And by the way, we're doing better than almost any other big city in the state. Last year, we reduced unsheltered homelessness by 10%. The rest of the state saw a 10% increase on average. Per capita, we have lower homelessness rates than San Francisco and Oakland. None of us are doing great, though, to be honest with you. So as I look ahead to the next couple of years, one thing we're going to do is finish our pipeline for interim housing. These are all projects and sites where we've gotten community buy-in. We've said just getting someone into a room with a door that closes, with access to case management, security, sanitation, basic services is incredibly effective. We've even started to innovate and build slightly more permanent. These are our first modular units that are stacked 3 high, and they even have little kitchenettes in them. So they're appropriate for an even longer term stay. They may even qualify for Section 8 vouchers at some point. So we're kind of testing a lot of different things. These come in at about $250,000 a unit versus what can be $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a unit in the more traditional, almost like a shipping container model. So this is our pipeline of additional. We'll add another almost 900 units. We're always looking for state grants to convert motels as interim housing. Okay, so here's the challenge I face. If anybody has any brilliant ideas, let me know. We've got about a $52 million structural shortfall in our budget this year. We have a bit of a true deficit. We then have this $25 million to address our stormwater permit, which I'll come back to, and then we have a bunch of programs and services we've been funding on a one-time basis, and now that we have a deficit, we have to figure out a trade-off. We either have to continue funding it or let it go. So stormwater, let me get into this stormwater issue. We were told quite a few years ago that we were in violation of the Clean Water Act because of our 4,500 people living outside. A very large number of them, perhaps half, live along our waterways. We have about 140 miles of waterways in San Jose, one of the largest in the state of any city, and we've got a couple thousand people living along them. And we have a lot of trash and bio-waste going into the waterways. And so the Regional Water Quality Control Board quite a few years ago said, you're in violation, what are you going to do about it? And by the way, being in violation of the Clean Water Act can subject you to fines of $60,000 per day per pollutant. And there are hundreds of types of pollutants that they track. So it can literally bankrupt a city if they want to bankrupt you. So it's a very serious issue. What we came up with was our direct discharge plan, where we said we'll do a bunch of cleanups, we'll make all these investments in capturing trash, we'll do more outreach, we do trash for cash, where we give trash bags and then we pay our unhoused residents to pick up trash and leave it where we can pick it up every week. So we created all these mitigations, and we got a lot of credits and essentially offsets for that. And so that we kind of muddled through for a few years. Well, that plan will expire. It's up for renewal, essentially, in the middle of next year. And they have let us know that they are not going to renew it. They're no longer going to honor any credits and offsets. We can do all the cleanups we want. We don't get any credit. They're going to go now to the strict measurement of what's in the water, which is what the Clean Water Act says. And what's in the water is not good, let me tell you. And when we did an analysis of it recently, we found that nearly 90% of the trash and bio-waste in the waterways is coming from unmanaged encampments, the fact that we have human beings living out along our waterways. So this is a new wrinkle that adds to the urgency. And one of the things about it that I think is just worth noting, and this is the fundamental trade-off we face, is the long-term need to build a lot more housing, period, and a lot more affordable housing, which is very slow and very expensive, but we need it, and is the most sustainable long-term solution, with the short-term need, ethical, fiscal, environmental, to not leave people out to live and die in unmanaged encampments. By the way, it's not free to leave people out there. The estimated cost on public services of leaving someone in an unmanaged tent encampment is over $65,000 per year per person. That's the impact on emergency rooms, police and fire response, trash pickup, environmental destruction and remediation, outreach workers, and all the rest. Just kind of managing the impact of encampments. The challenge is getting someone indoors doesn't just free up $65,000. That would be very simple if it did, but it's not fungible money. I can't just move somebody indoors and then go to the local hospital and say, let me have that $10,000 share of that cost that you would bear. What it does is it makes those services better for everybody else. But that's not necessarily money we can capture to go use to house people. So what I think this Clean Water Act issue is going to do is create a forcing function to address the most immediate challenge. And I would point you to Boston, New York, Chicago, basically, bless you, any big city in a place with a very harsh winter. The reality is, and it's not perfect, and there's a lot of arguments against it, so I'm just going to lay this out there. Cities with very harsh winters tend to be in states that are shelter-first states, where they say you are legally obligated to provide at minimum a shelter bed for every person who's outdoors, because it's not ethically or politically acceptable to let people freeze to death on the streets. So you have a lot of cities in the Northeast and Midwest that have built big congregate shelters and said we've got a bed for everybody, and they have to by law. And so you don't tend to see the level of tent encampments that you see in places with better weather. I'm not advocating that a great solution is to go build a bunch of congregate shelters where people don't want to be, where there's a lot of there can be violence and sexual assault, and there are a lot of reasons people don't want to be in congregate shelters. So I'm not advocating for that. But the reality is, at least I don't think that should be our primary solution. We need some forcing function, I believe, whether it's a commitment just with political will to say we will be shelter first, we will build basic dignified shelter for every person who needs it, or we need some other legal mechanism like the Clean Water Act to effectively force us to do it, because we don't have the forcing function of a very harsh winter that requires us to do it for ethical and political reasons. So as we look at the next phase, we're going to continue to build permanent affordable housing, with all the caveats around how slow and expensive and non-scalable it has been at this point. We're going to continue to finish that pipeline on interim housing. But where I think the city of San Jose is going, because of the immense need and the demands of the Clean Water Act, and the fact that after spending all the money we have, we still have a deficit of 4,500 people outside, is we are going to start to move into other more cost-effective solutions that include lower rungs on the ladder, like safe sleeping, which is basically managed sanctioned encampments, safe parking, congregate shelter to the extent that we can do it in ways that are safe and dignified and where people will accept it. Homeward bound is something we put in the budget. San Francisco is doing a lot of this, and what we're finding is for 5, 10, 15% of people, we can actually just directly reconnect people with family and usually pay a bit of money to help them basically get back indoors, and it saves us from having to go build a brand new unit. Happy to get into that. And then prevention. Targeting dollars to identify who is most at risk of falling into homelessness and stabilizing them for 6 to 9 months. We find that for about 6 to 9 months, about $10,000 of rental subsidy and other support, we can keep people housed, and then they tend to remain housed without needing as much subsidy after that. So we need cheaper, faster solutions for the reasons I gave: safe sleeping, safe parking. We're standing up a very large safe parking site in North San Jose. It'll be the largest in the county. We'll be open by the end of the year. Maybe we can rethink congregate shelter a bit. Homeward bound I talked about. Prevention. To build political buy-in, this is another interesting one. I knocked on 10,000 doors when I ran. And what I heard, and I've seen reflected in the polling, is a lot of skepticism that we can solve this problem. A lot of cynicism. And the most common reason is, as we address an encampment and offer people housing or build a safe parking site, what people see, what neighbors and voters see, is an area get re-encamped and they believe it's hopeless. There's no progress. And so one of the things we're starting to do is be very strategic about saying, okay, here's a new interim shelter or new transitional housing site we're opening. Here's an area around it where we can offer everybody housing, get people indoors, and then prevent re-encampment in this public space. And I get and I'm open, by the way, to all the tough questions and criticism. Some people say, oh, you're criminalizing homelessness. That's not the intent. But the idea is that we've got to allow the community to see progress and start to reclaim some public space, particularly parks and trails, so that people feel like and see actual visible progress, because we are losing the public buy-in to continue to tax ourselves to fund solutions. One of the big opportunities ahead of us that I'm worried about is a regional housing measure that would generate $10 to $20 billion for affordable housing and is not pulling anywhere close to the 2/3 that it needs to pass. And even if we change the state constitution to allow it to pass at 55%, we're right on the bubble right now with it pulling around 57, 58%. So there's a cynicism setting in amongst voters that we also have to be cognizant of, that if they don't see more progress, it's going to become increasingly difficult to ask them to give us more money to solve this problem. So that's another piece of this. Let me just go to questions, because I said a whole lot there. But why don't we open it up to questions?
You're going to do this Commonwealth Club style. David and Monica are going to collect your cars. If you need a card, if you can, just wave. And I will, I don't have any white ones. I will get questions from the, brought up to me, and I'll ask them through the mic. These are not blank.
Any blank ones here?
Here you go.
You can pass this one. Oh, you got one.
Sorry. Sorry. So while we wait for some of those questions to come up, let's just thank the mayor for his remarks. While we're waiting, I thought I would touch on the weather, since you brought it up in your remarks. One current research study that's being conducted by a professor in environmental studies here, C.J. Gabby, being funded by the Unhoused initiative, is the impact of heat index on unhoused residents in Santa Clara County. I'm wondering if your office or the city is exploring those impacts already, and what your thoughts are on how our increasingly hot summers and years are impacting people who are unsheltered.
Yeah, great question, and we have sites in the city that we open as both warming locations and cooling centers when temperatures drop below or go above certain thresholds. We automatically trigger a protocol that then opens city facilities for people to come in to heat a heated site or an air-conditioned site. And as those fill, we have the ability to flex space to expand into other sites. So we do very much take that into account.
What can we do to convert some of the office buildings to housing now that so many tech companies have gone remote or hybrid in their work arrangements?
Yeah, this is a great question. I get it a lot. A couple things I will note that make this a little more challenging than you might think. Not that we can't do it at all, but it's harder than any of us thought when the pandemic hit and suddenly we had all these commercial vacancies. First, I'll just note, many other types of land we are not seeing high vacancies. Our industrial land, just for your awareness, is at a 2.5% vacancy rate. It's about the lowest it has ever been, and there is huge demand for manufacturing and distribution. And so really we're talking about those tall commercial buildings where in our downtown, like many downtowns across the country, the vacancy rate is 30% or so. The challenge to converting it to housing is a couple of things. One, the floor plates of the building end up looking quite different in a commercial building than a residential building. Residential buildings tend to be narrower because they maximize the window space and the ability to have natural light, and they're configured very differently from an office building where you can have a lot more interior space without windows. And so converting just from a floor plate standpoint, it would be hard to rent someone an apartment in a building with no windows. And so you end up having less usable space. So it is a little challenging. We do have some commercial buildings that are narrower that could be converted. That gets to the second catch, which is the cost of renovation and conversion to take an open floor plan and turn it into individual units, particularly with even the basic amenities like the kitchen that you typically would want in a big tall building, ends up being extremely expensive, and compared to the things that we're doing with interim housing, not even close from a cost comparison standpoint. So it's possible, but we're struggling to even get the private market to take empty commercial buildings and put money into converting them for market rate, where in theory you would have a lot of demand and much higher rent. They're even struggling to get those to pencil. And so at some point, if you're going to be paying the equivalent of $400,000 or $500,000 a unit or more to convert a building from commercial to residential, you're actually better off in this market buying an existing residential building. You can actually do it for less, believe it or not. So the economics are really tough, and the physical floor plates are tough. It's not impossible, but even to convert one building would take the city a lot more money than our other solutions. And so from an ROI standpoint, it really isn't there when it comes to addressing homelessness.
Right, we received 2 questions on this topic, so I'm going to kind of smoosh them together. It says, I read an article a few days ago about how AI is being used to detect homeless-related incidents, like folks sleeping in cars or tents in public spaces. Is it possible to explain how this works? What is the goal of this program? And what is being done to respond to concerns about these AI tools facilitating the criminalization of homelessness?
Yeah, great question. So there was some news a week or 2 ago about an AI tool we're using on our roadways. So let me try to clarify a few things. There's a lot of misunderstandings about this. Number one, we're not using AI to identify people or tent encampments. Here's where we started and what we are doing and why. We started with, we have a number of services. There are 311 services. You can call 311 or use an app to report a pothole, a street light that's out, graffiti, illegal dumping, and you can request a city service. So you drive over a pothole, you call the city or put it in the app, we come out a few days later, we fill the pothole. Okay, so far so good. We are looking at this and saying, what's the next generation of this? Because it's still very labor intensive, very inefficient. We realized, hey, we have city vehicles or contracted vehicles that drive over every mile of every road in the city every single week. So we are experimenting, it's very early days, but outfitting a vehicle. We have one vehicle so far that we're testing this on, with cameras. We're using cameras from 4 different companies because we're testing them head to head, to start with pothole detection and to be able to, in an automated way, detect nascent potholes as they are starting automatically in an automated way with no human intervention, route it to the Department of Transportation, and then have a team come out and fill it so we can fix them faster before they get big, before you even drive over and notice that they're there. Okay, so that's the idea. As we've had these cameras mounted on the vehicles, we've found, well, there are a lot of things when you're driving down the street that you can identify. One of our single biggest sources of complaint, I think on the order of 50,000 complaints a year, are abandoned vehicles. We don't quite know what's abandoned and what isn't. So one of the things we look at is, do vehicles ever move? Has a vehicle, believe it or not, hundreds and hundreds of vehicles that have been stolen and left somewhere, and nobody knows if anybody owns it. It just sits there for a very long time. We've had vehicles on blocks in commercial parking lots for months on end. So we're constantly trying to figure out how to manage this high volume of complaints and concerns that we get. So it turns out these cameras on these vehicles can generally, with pretty good accuracy, identify potholes, can see graffiti, can identify illegal dumping. One of the things that we have seen in some initial analysis that they can identify is when a vehicle is lived in. Now, for a car, not so accurately. For an RV, however, they are able to. Now, we get these complaints constantly, manually. The idea here would be that because we have a system for managing RVs, where we are going out and offering services, we make contact with people, we collect bio waste, we also in some cases have to relocate RVs, knowing where the 800 some RVs in the city are at any given time is useful. In the initial version of this, which just started recently on one vehicle, we do not, and I suspect we would always do this, we wipe all of the license plate data and any people from the image. But with over 70% accuracy, the tool can identify that this is an RV somebody lives in, which makes our ability to do outreach and provide services and collect bio waste a lot more efficient. The bio waste piece is really important. Ultimately, to comply with the Stormwater Permit, the Clean Water Act, we have got to stop RVs from dumping bio waste in the sewer system because it goes straight into the water and straight into the bay. And so we currently, of the 800 plus RVs, we provide weekly bio waste pickup at about 150. And we need to scale that. In fact, I put in my budget message, we need to scale that up to eventually all 800, and we need to know where they are so we can better manage them. In terms of criminalization, we do not criminalize homelessness in the state of California. You are not going to be arrested for being homeless. But I do believe that there's a code of conduct that we need to hold people to, and that it is acceptable to have some places that, because they are a public right-of-way or they are a public park that everybody should have access to, we can say this is not an area where you can camp. But we are not allowed to go ban encampments across the city. We actually have very few places in San Jose where we actually actively post signs saying you can't camp here. Now, I know there's a Supreme Court case that may change that. I will tell you, I don't believe that we should be banning encampments for the sake of banning them. I think the right formula is to provide at least basic dignified shelter and then increasingly incentivize people to use it. But I am concerned about the Supreme Court decision. I think it could take us in a bad direction, essentially. So I don't know if that answers the question on AI, but we'll see if there are more follow-ups. Go ahead, sorry.
Thank you. And shameless plug, if you're interested in learning more about that Supreme Court case, the Unhoused Initiative is hosting an event at noon on April 16th in the law school, or you can stream it live. So register and learn more. All right, we have a couple budget questions related to shifting funds away from affordable housing. So I'll read this one. Without Measure A in 2016 and the 5,800 units of permanent housing it is creating, the number of unhoused today would probably double what we have now. Probably be double what we have now. Aren't you worried about an explosion of homelessness in 5 years if we slow or stop building affordable housing now?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of trade-offs. I don't know that it is actually accurate that you can just map that one-to-one. First of all, not to nitpick the numbers, but Measure A will ultimately deliver about 5,000 units. Thus far, only about 1,000 have been built. So to say that our number would be double from what it is almost certainly not accurate. We also find that a lot of the people who get housing through Measure E are not people who are currently living in an encampment. And so it's a very dynamic problem. You have a flow in and you have a flow out of homelessness, and there are a lot of tipping points that will lead someone into homelessness and a lot of ways that people get out of homelessness. So I'd be a little careful about saying with precision, if you didn't do this, you'd have double the number, or it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, just to be really clear. But I'm concerned. The truth is we need more for everything that we do. We need more prevention of homelessness, the need for rental subsidies, just like the need for addressing food insecurity, is far beyond the resources we have. The need for affordable housing and housing supply in general, including market rate, is far beyond what we can do through a public budget. And so we're in this situation, as I mentioned at the beginning, of making some really difficult trade-offs. To me, there is a moral, fiscal, and environmental argument for doing more around interim, whether that's safe sleeping, safe parking, the modular units, motel conversions, and putting more emphasis on the lower rungs on the ladder because of the immense human suffering of leaving people in totally unmanaged encampments. I spent a lot of time out in the community, including every weekend, out doing cleanups along our waterways, often talking to our unhoused neighbors. And the truth is, the longer we leave people without any support, without any case management, any supportive services, in totally unmanaged conditions, often the worse their condition becomes and the harder it is for them to ever turn their lives around and get to something better. So I think that you can argue it either way. We certainly need both. We, I think, swung the pendulum a little too far towards saying it's all about affordable housing. We just got to build a lot of permanent affordable housing, even if it is $1 million a door, even if it takes over 5 years to build. And I think the lack of enough lower rungs has left a lot of people in dire conditions. Last year we had over 200 people die in our unmanaged tent encampments. It's an immense amount of human suffering. It's an immense tax. Again, when we get somebody, here's an interesting fact for you just quickly, and I know we have a lot of other questions. When we have built these small modular units, and we get people stabilized with some dignity, with 3 meals a day, with access to a bathroom, just the basics, what we find is one, there's a wait, they're 100% occupied. There's a waiting list, hundreds of people long for those units. Believe it or not, people sleeping on our streets tonight who are waiting in line saying, please give me one of these units. We see their outcomes are incredible. Over 3 years, the vast majority remain housed and half have graduated to something more permanent, sometimes because of a Measure A unit, but typically some other place that they have found. When we look at calls for service, the use of emergency rooms, police and fire response, blight, so trash and graffiti and other issues, before and after a site is opened, it drops significantly. So the need for these sort of first responder services to just kind of put a Band-Aid on a situation goes down dramatically once you give somebody the dignity and stability of their own little place with on-site services. So you can argue it either way. I just think the numbers make it really daunting to put all the eggs in the basket of building permanent affordable housing, even if it is the ideal solution. And I think it begs another question, which is, how is it in California that we broke the housing production market so bad that we don't have the supply that we need? And I think we have to take a wider view. Yes, we should keep taxing ourselves to build affordable housing, but the numbers are not adding up. And part of what we also need to look at is the 50 years of layers of process and regulation and fees. And I mean, they were all well intended. The growth boundary and other environmental standards and labor standards and community input and historic preservation and the series of community meetings and the planning commission and the council and the 15 pages of fees and impact fees that we assess at the city that can amount to $100,000 a unit and on and on and on. But where we are today is your city council in San Jose has approved 6,000 housing units in downtown that we want in the last 10 years that have not gotten built because the cost to build is so high And it's so slow and expensive to build in California that they literally can't get the financing because the cost to build is higher than they could ever get in rent or for sale value on the other side. So we broke the housing production market. San Jose used to produce 5,000 units a year. Now we're lucky if we produce 1,500 a year. And a third of them are ADUs in people's backyards. So unless we fix the macro situation of making it easier and faster to build housing of all types in California, I don't know that we're going to be able to subsidize our way out of this crisis through permanent affordable housing as much as we certainly need it, and it is the best solution if we can scale it. So this is what I say about the trade-offs we're facing. There's no easy answer here. Sorry, I know you have a lot more questions.
Don't be sorry, we're happy to hear the comments. This is related to barriers to building affordable housing. Can you comment on how restrictive zoning laws, such as single-family zoning, prevent construction of affordable, high-density units, and what is being done to address this?
Yeah, so the state has removed a lot of these barriers and taken away a lot of local control, but that doesn't actually appear to be the barrier in the South Bay. We have said yes to every affordable unit in San Jose over the last decade. We've said yes to every high-density project. The state has taken away a lot of local control over, we sort of had this vision with our general plan that we would go very dense and mixed use near transit, in downtown, in our urban villages, that we would have corridors that would be very dense. In addition to doing that, the state's taken away a lot of local control. We've approved every project that's come to the council, and yet we're not building. So I think there's a larger kind of macro problem we have around the very high cost of construction. You can build the exact same unit in a neighboring state for about half the cost, sometimes less. So I think we're going to have to deal with that reality if we're going to build. It also, to me, is quite ironic that when we do it through government and it's publicly subsidized, the projects we're approving now are coming in at a per unit project cost of 1.2 million a unit, and the private sector's building virtually the same unit at $700,000 a door right here. And then you go to a neighboring state and you can build it for half that. So I think we're going to have to come to grips with, are we letting the perfect be the enemy of the good in California when it comes to the layers of requirements and regulations in the building code and all the other well-intended things that we have layered on to housing in California?
Thank you. Also related to barriers to building affordable housing, permanent or temporary solutions, how much does NIMBYism affect San Jose, and what are you doing to try to overcome NIMBYism and other barriers?
You know, NIMBYism is certainly an issue. I've been on the receiving end of my fair share of community meetings where I've had anywhere from 50 to 500 people in a room yelling, "Don't, that's a great idea, go build it somewhere else," right? Of everything from the interim solutions and the safe parking solutions to even market, affordable and market rate. By the way, on market rate, it is worth, because we often pit these things against one another. It's affordable or interim. One's good, one's bad. We need both. We also do the same with affordable and market rate. One's good, one's bad. One helps, one doesn't. We pit them against one another. I think we need both. The Minneapolis Federal Reserve, about a month ago, put out a fantastic study on filtering and showed the positive impacts of, if you build 100 units of market rate, how much movement that creates at all levels of income through the entire housing market. So I highly recommend reading the Minneapolis Fed's piece on housing at all income levels, including the importance of building market rate, which in theory is the easiest to get large amounts of capital to do at scale. So just worth reading. It may challenge some of your assumptions, certainly challenge some assumptions I had about it. On NIMBYism, I can tell you from the polling and from knocking on 10,000 doors that the number of people and the intensity of feeling around the high cost of living and the need for more housing and more affordable housing is much stronger than the number and the intensity of the folks who don't want housing. We are a very pro-housing city. Like I said, the number of projects, market rate, affordable, interim, that have come to our council, every single one in my memory we have voted yes on, almost always unanimously. So I don't see it, while it is an issue, I don't see it as a major barrier. Of all the things that seem to be preventing housing from being built in San Jose, NIMBYism and zoning actually feel fairly low on the list, given that we keep approving projects and they're just not able to get financing. That tells me there's a different problem.
Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, we have an audience member who would like to know if you have plans to address the particular challenges faced by unhoused women.
It's a good question, and I think I would start by saying I'd like to learn more and talk to some of our unhoused women. I was just talking to an unhoused woman earlier today, but I would like to better understand what the specific experiences and needs are before I pontificate too much. I will say we do have a couple of sites in San Jose that are specifically for families. One is specifically single moms with kids. We do believe, this is kind of a broader philosophic point, from our research and our conversations with unhoused residents, that having at least some of our communities serve specific subpopulations, if you will, is a good way to go, because people feel more comfortable and you can better tailor the services and kind of the culture at the site around the needs of a particular group of people. So we're doing some of that. I'm sure we probably need to do more of it, but that's sort of been on our radar. But I think I probably need a little more about specifically what some of the asks are. We have tried very hard in our interim sites to embrace the notion of being low barrier. Come as you are. If you have an addiction, we'll work with you on that. If you have a pet, great. All of our interim sites have dog runs, and we actually bring vets on site to help folks. If you have a lot of belongings, great. We have literally shipping containers for extra storage space. So we've tried to learn from past iterations in congregate shelter, especially where there are so many rules and restrictions that people say, I can't possibly be here because I can't have my pet, my spouse, my belongings. I'm losing all my autonomy. I'd rather live in a tent by the creek than subject myself to that. So we've tried to evolve a bit, but I think there's always more that we can do.
Great. And last question. If I didn't get to yours, I apologize. I do appreciate everyone who submitted one. Just don't have enough time to get to them all. But in the spirit of being in Santa Clara, could you tell us a bit about the influence of your Jesuit education?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Well, growing up, I grew up in a working class neighborhood down in Watsonville, California. Anybody know where Watsonville is? It's where, okay, I see some hands. It's where your strawberries come from, if you're not aware. It's about 55 miles from here. My parents had both studied theology, and we grew up in a, I'd characterize it as kind of progressive Catholic household where we talked a lot about social justice. Coming to Bellarmine only reinforced that. And fundamentally, what I think I've most taken away from my Catholic education is a very strong commitment to the notion that everyone has inherent value. In fact, I agree with the Constitution. We all are created equal, and that we're interdependent, that what happens to one of us affects all of us. And so fundamentally, our personal happiness and fulfillment and success in life is very much bound up in that of everyone else. And the better off we can make someone else by using our talents to serve others, frankly, the better off we're all going to be. And we should care a lot about how the least in our community, if you want to use that term, what their experience is, what their opportunities are. And the more that we can invest in and serve and create opportunities for those who are the most marginalized, it's the right thing to do, but it's also, in the long run, the most life-affirming and fulfilling for our collective destiny as kind of one, you could say one body of Christ if you want to be theological about it, but one human race, one community. So that deep sense of inherent human worth, interdependence, and the notion of empathy. The most fulfilling part of my job is going out into the community, particularly on Saturdays, getting to go out to community cleanups, creek cleanups, and often having one-on-one conversations with neighbors who are out for a cleanup. That neighbor may be an unhoused resident who literally lives in the creek that we're pulling trash out of. And just having those human face-to-face conversations with people is by far the most fulfilling aspect of the job for me. And I think that was very much shaped by my Catholic upbringing and Catholic education.
Well, Mayor Mahan, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of you for being here and giving us your time. And special thanks to Monica, Debbie, Joel from the Ethics Center, and Corey in Public Health for all the coordination. Shout out to Media Services. Thank you, Dean Press. And again, thank you, Mayor Mahan. And we hope you all will join us for Unhoused Initiative events in the future. So grab some cookies and get home safe.
Have a great evening.